NFL teams get out of these joint practices? I'm sure in terms of the playbook, they don't want to show each other very much. It has become commonplace, but what do you see as the main benefits for practicing with another team?
Well, in hearing Coach Mike Mularkey this week, first of all, he was very pleased with the 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday at St. Thomas Sports Park with those joint practices with the Carolina Panthers. And it's about getting the right kind of work in, the amount of reps that you want against a different guy, against a guy that is not wearing your uniform. It's kind of the best of both worlds without playing in a preseason game like they're going to do this afternoon. So it's about getting reps. Quarterbacks and receivers is about honing in on timing and routes. And it's really just about making sure that you're getting prepped. Because you're right, it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface. Like, well, they don't show anything to each other. It's, we're living in vanilla land, but there are some benefits out of it, and it's mostly about getting the reps in and, just the fundamentals of football and making sure that you're kind of getting ready. And I'll tell you this, I think you're going to see more than 3 points for the Titans offense this afternoon at Nissan Stadium. They had great practices this week. It started Monday night. The weather forced an open practice to be in a closed practice into the bubble, and they were physical. They've been physical all week. I think they got a little wake-up call there, and Coach has made the best of it and made the most use out of it. But I think you're going to see a different outing today.
We are starting off with a little NFL talk this morning on the Saturday Sports Splash. Rhett Bryant joining us. He's the general manager of the Titans radio network. And Rhett, no doubt the Titans look like a team that needed a little extra practice in their preseason opener. The loss last week to the lowly New York Jets, 7-3. I think the biggest concern, though, coming out of that game is that offensive line. We're all worried that they might be headed back to their old ways as we saw the starters give up a Marcus Mariota sack, and then the backups let Alex Tanney get absolutely battered. Put our minds at ease a little bit when it comes to that unit, Brett. Why was their ghastly performance last week the exception rather than the rule?
Well, let's say this. First of all, you kind of laid it out perfectly for me. The starters, the people that protect Marcus almost every snap without a lot of substitution, gave up one sack and limited reps and numbers. And so that wasn't great, yes. But they didn't give up the 7 sacks that a lot of the reserves did the rest of the ball game. I think what you have is, and this is something that veterans like Brian Arakpo, Derek Morgan, Jarrell Casey have been preaching to the team about, don't listen to the noise. There's a lot of people picking you to win the division, to do well. Don't listen to that stuff. Just keep your nose to the grindstone and practice. Get in the reps, get in the work, get better, and get ready for the Oakland Raiders on September the 10th, because that's what all of this is about leading up to that contest.
That's exactly right.
Was it the best outing? Absolutely not. But you can't forget one thing. Let's give some credit to the New York Jets. You're talking about a team that, listen, I'm not punching holes in Josh McCown as the quarterback, but he's a 38-year-old quarterback. They don't have a quarterback. They have a bunch of guys. They don't have a whole lot of other weapons because they basically sold all those off. So what do they have to do? They have to show their season ticket holders in the preseason, here's what we got, and show as much as they can. And the two things they have is a good run defense and certainly a pass rush, and they showed it. So credit to them in all of this because, it's not like the Titans just failed or, had a miserable outing as the offensive line. There was a cause and an effect there. So, but no. So they started with that practice in the bubble on Monday night, and guys were blowing people off the line. There are holes the running backs could drive a tractor-trailer truck through. Just looking at the 2 days of joint practice with the Panthers, O-line versus D-line drills, Jack Conklin is absolutely mauling people. He is just pushing around a Julius Peppers. He's pushing around a Starlo Tulele. Guys that have been in the league for a while that are dangerous for that Carolina pass rush. And again, here's the other thing too. They're seeing a 4-3 defense today, and they don't see a ton of those anymore. It seems like everything has shifted. But I can tell you with almost 100% certainty, based on what I saw in practice this week, You'll see a different product today, and I think you'll be okay, because let's not hit the panic button. It's the first preseason game. Nobody's really showing anything. And, yes, I know it's like, oh, my gosh, they're getting the quarterback killed. They'll be okay. Trust me.
Well, we will trust you for now, and we're hoping you're exactly right. Rhett Bryan with us this morning on the Saturday Sports Splash from the Titans Radio Network. And as we talk about hitting the panic button, the defensive backfield is another point of great concern, I think, coming out of the Jets game. Free agent pickup Logan Ryan looked more like a liability than a leader in that preseason opener. And all week long, he's been kind of publicly blasted for his performance there. Why is it unfair to judge him based on his first game with the Titans? And from what you've seen, how much better can he be?
Well, it's unfair just for the same reasons that we talked about the offensive line protection a moment ago. Look, it's the first preseason game. And, teams are not planning for each other at all. They don't basically do that all preseason long. So I'm reserving judgment till I see what happens September the 10th against the Raiders. And listen, there are plenty of moments in practices where I've seen him hold his own just fine. Now, look, Logan Ryan was brought in here to bolster this secondary. The idea that he is a shutdown corner, don't get that in your head, because he's never been that. So the next question you're thinking is, well, why did they pay him $10 million a year for 3 years? Well, that's what the market was bearing on those kinds of things as free agency started. And I'm sure that John Robinson had his ideas about what Logan Ryan was going to bring to this team, because after all, Logan had played in New England long enough. He scouted him, brought him through the pre-draft process when he was a rookie out of Rutgers years ago when he was still in New England as one of their scouts. But, yes, does Logan have work to do? Absolutely. Does the secondary have work to do? Yes. That's one of the points of emphasis going into this preseason, and that's something they're still working on. But there's a lot of good pieces back there. I'm not just watching a Logan Ryan. Watch an Adoree Jackson. Watch a Kevin Byard. Watch a Jonathan Cyprien. LaShawn Sims is holding his corner spot right now. He's done quite well and had a good week of practice. So, again, it'll be interesting to see what they do in this deal today. Now, Cam Newton, I don't expect him to play at all. He's still coming back from the rotator cuff surgery for the Panthers. Although what I saw from him in practice, he looks like he could go at any time. They're probably just holding him out to be safe. So you'll see lots of Derek Anderson and Joe Webb and Garrett Gilbert at their quarterback positions. And they have some big targets in, Devin Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin. And the secondary this week in practice held those guys in check rather effectively. So, again, let's see what happens after this one's done this afternoon at Nissan Stadium.
Rhett, as we talk about the preseason schedule, I wanted to get your thoughts on the way it kind of set up for the Titans with both home games starting in the middle of the day. Today's contest against the Panthers kicks off at 2 o'clock, and then next Sunday the Titans host the Bears at noon. Isn't it hard enough to get people in the stands for the preseason without playing these games in the heat of the day?
Well, I think that's a challenge for anybody that would have this schedule in the preseason. I don't know. I haven't watched a ton of other preseason games on television, but I don't see like massive amounts of people stacked into stadiums, sold out. But yeah, that certainly is a challenge for the Titans ticket office and trying to get folks in. But I'll tell you this, it's really good for the football team. I guarantee you there's a guy named Mike Mularkey that loves this schedule, because today he wants them to play in the heat. He's going to get that today with a 2 o'clock kick. And then think about next week's game. You have a Sunday noon kickoff, nationally televised on Fox against the Chicago Bears. Well, that's perfect, because I know Mike Mularkey loves routine and he loves to get guys into habits. Well, this is just like playing a regular season game. That way, next week he can lay everything out just like the regular season would come along, and having a film watching, press conference, and everything they normally do on Mondays, Tuesdays, the players' day off, practicing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, walk through Saturday, play Sunday. So he's looking forward to having all of those guys together and getting into that routine, especially for the guys that are rookies coming in, to get them acclimated. And then the following week, you have the short week and the short turnaround with the last preseason game that Thursday night in Kansas City, August the 31st. Well, that will help him prepare for a week, much like they're going to see when they play the Steelers on Thursday night in November later on in the season. So he looks at those things as positive and certainly a way that he can get everyone into a routine and kind of get things to fall into play.
We're talking Titans this morning with Rhett Bryan from the team's radio network. And, Rhett, I think a lot of folks are in agreement with me in thinking that the real bright spot for the Titans last week against the Jets was the level of comfort and durability shown by franchise quarterback Marcus Mariota. We've seen other players, especially quarterbacks, never bounce back from broken legs. What, in your opinion, has been the key to such a successful recovery for Marcus?
I think it just comes down to one of the things that they think is a cornerstone in the definition of being a Titan, and that is work. Marcus Mariota, you will not outwork that guy. I can't imagine what he has gone through in 7.5 months to get back to where he is. And he obviously did a lot, because the first 2 months that he was rolling around there with a boot on after the surgery, he wasn't allowed to do much of anything prohibitive, just because everything had to heal up before he got the green light from the doctors. But I can tell you this, someone asked Coach Malarkey after his post-practice presser about, is the leg a concern, or is it something that you can now put behind you now that you've seen him in a game setting, you've seen him take hits, you've seen him take pressure? And he said, absolutely. It's not even a consideration in terms of planning, preparation, or any thought that things are not as they should be. He said he's just as good a quarterback as he was before he broke the leg, and now he's back to 100%. And I think you'll see that certainly this afternoon. The guy's rolling out of the pocket. He can run full speed. He doesn't show any signs of having any second thoughts. And certainly the psychological part's over after the hit that he took last week in New York. Coach Malarkey will want to work him in the number ones for at least a couple of series, and I think that he would like to, in a perfect world, see those in quick, successful fashion. If they can go down and have a couple of scoring drives, he'll pull him out of there, put in Matt Castle and Alex Tanny later, and kind of roll on from there. That's kind of the game plan.
Excellent, because I was going to ask about that. How much do we expect to see Mariota and the Titans starting offense? You've already answered that, maybe a couple of series, and, of course, we all hope they're successful. Rhett, what about an injury update on the Titans? I saw where Eric Decker's going to sit out today with a sprained ankle, and we still haven't gotten a real update on how bad that hamstring injury is for Corey Davis. What's the latest on those two guys, and who else is banged up coming into the day?
Well, Eric Decker got twisted, got a slightly twisted ankle in that first joint practice with the Panthers on Wednesday of this week. And from what I understand from the training staff and the coaches, that it is just a mild tweak, and they're just setting him out as a precaution. He even tried to come back out to practice, I think, later that day on Wednesday when it happened. And they're just being precautionary about that. I would expect him to probably be back and doing some light work next week. As for Corey Davis has the hamstring that he tweaked, I guess a couple of weeks back. They listed him as week to week. They immediately said last week he's not going to play in New York. And look, I think in a perfect world, you'd like to get him in there to get some quality reps in a preseason game, certainly for next week, which would be the dress rehearsal where they would play a half, go into halftime, cool down, warm back up again, and play a series in the third quarter. But erring on the side of caution, I don't know that you'll see Corey Davis in the preseason. I think if I had to guess, I don't have anything to base this on at all, but I think you'd see him September the 10th against the Oakland Raiders to start the regular season. They know what they have in him. They know what they, and look, yes, he lost some reps in camp, but they don't have to completely rely on him. That's the luxury of this wide receiving core, which will be one of the places where you're going to have some serious roster decisions to make, because they have some nice talent there. Because let's not forget, you still have a Tajay Sharp who's on the PUP list and will be coming off of that soon. You still have Rashard Matthews. You still have Taywan Taylor from Western Kentucky. You still have Eric Decker. So you've got some luxuries there that you can kind of bring Corey Davis back along a little at a time. As for some other injuries, trying to think, they've got a lot of guys with hamstrings and groins. Bo Brinkley, the long snapper, has a groin that he's coming back from. They signed a long snapper, Ryan De Silva, earlier in this week, to kind of get things through. I don't know that Bo Brinkley will play in this one. DeMontre Hurst, the cornerback, he has a groin. A couple of guys with hamstrings, like wide receiver Mikel McKay. But all of it is just mild stuff and stuff that you normally would hear about this time of the year. And knock on wood, not near as serious as some of the other teams in the league you hear about where, say a Miami Dolphins roster that's lost their quarterback, they've lost the starting middle linebacker, they've lost a starting corner to some horrific injuries. It's just a normal nicks and dings that you would certainly find this time of year.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that update going into today's preseason game. And Red, as we close out here, I wanted to ask you about one of my favorite storylines to follow throughout the preseason, and that is the one of the little-known player with a real shot to make an NFL roster. Who are those guys right now for the Titans who we might not be hearing a ton about but have a legitimate shot at making the team?
Oh, well, trying to think about who that would be, because here's the thing. This roster has improved so much. Those stories are a little few and far between, but I'll tell you one right now that is going to make this roster if the wheels don't fall off in the next 3 preseason games, and that's Antoine Woods, number 75 on defense. He's a defensive lineman, brought in last year as an undrafted rookie free agent, spent a lot of the time on the practice squad, was brought up on the active roster towards the end of the year. He played at Southern Cal, 4-year starter there, has really had a fantastic camp. He's one of these guys, he had the bad college body, came in, worked really hard in the offseason. He's up to 323 pounds, moved a lot of his belly weight up to the shoulders into the chest, and he's much stronger. And he's a guy that has the attention of Dick LeBeau, Mike Mularkey, John Robinson, and the rest of his coaches, and certainly his teammates. I'd keep an eye on him for sure. Now, somebody that you need to watch that's a part of this year's draft class and was a later pick is Jayon Brown, the linebacker from UCLA. He was the 155th overall pick in the 5th round. Smaller linebacker, a lot like that the Colts would use in those systems with Peyton Manning years ago. He's, 6 feet, 225 pounds, but he's fast. And he was brought in here for one reason, and that is to close gaps in the passing attack. As we all know, in the last couple of years, the things that have really gotten this Titans defense is the opposing tight end. And one of his jobs is to stop the run, of course, but to drop back in coverage and take care of those kinds of things. He's had a nice camp, is really, really fast in closing speed. Jayon Brown, number 55, would be another one I would watch.
That's awesome. And I guess that's kind of a selfish question because I just love that kind of thing. This time of year, when I watch preseason football, that's what I'm looking for. And I appreciate you kind of giving us a little bit of insight there. I'll be watching those two guys, Antoine Woods and Jayon Brown, throughout the rest of the preseason and trying to see if those kind of guys can make the ball club and be a part of things moving forward for the Titans. A future that we all hope is very bright, and our show's future is always going to be bright as long as we can get great guests like you, Mr. Rhett Bryan. I appreciate you joining us this morning.
You're too kind to say that. I'm looking forward to some good action today, and I look forward to talking to you down the road.
Thank you, Rhett. I greatly appreciate it.
All right, Justin. Take care.
Rhett Bryan, the general manager of the Titans Radio Network, kind enough to come on and talk a little NFL football with us this morning. He doesn't seem fazed, doesn't seem worried at all about the Titans kind of laying an egg in preseason game number 1. We hope he's right about that. We hope we see a 180 from the men in two-tone blue today. They will be hosting the Carolina Panthers in a preseason contest that kicks off today over at LP Field at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Again, in the heat of the day, they play both of their home preseason games right underneath the sun there at LP Field. It should be interesting. And like Rhett said, I thought that was a good perspective. The coaching staff loves that. It's a good test for the players, and it's something they'll have to do, at least throughout the early part of the season. They'll have to play in the heat of the day, so maybe that's the best way to do it. Not the best experience for the fans. I guess it's all about perspective sometimes. And we'll get some great perspective coming up next. We'll talk to Adam Sparks. He's the Vanderbilt beat writer for the Tennessee, and we'll talk with him about what's going on in Vandy's fall football camp. We'll also talk to him about the Doors' potential move off campus. They're talking about moving to what could be a new Major League Soccer stadium over at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Adam Sparks will join us to discuss that next on the Saturday Sports Splash.
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A free loaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Call 647-6989 or Jackson's.
There's finally a stress-free, no-risk way to buy a new mattress thanks to Beds Express. With their Triple Z guarantee, there's literally no way you can go wrong. Don't waste another night tossing and turning on your old, worn-out bed. Dive into affordable comfort at Beds Express in Clarksville at 1767 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, Bellevue at 7643 Highway 70 South, and in Murfreesboro at 2222 Medical Center Parkway. Beds Express, Middle Tennessee's better sleep solution. Made-to-order, never-frozen Midwest beef served on a toasted buttery bun is just the beginning at Culver's of Clarksville. The experience crescendos into fresh homemade custard that you can customize into delectable treats like sundaes, banana splits, or one of their signature concrete mixers. You'll be treated like family and fed like royalty at Culver's of Clarksville, near Exit 4 just off Wilma Rudolph Boulevard at 140 Southampton Place. Culver's of Clarksville. Welcome to Delicious.
WJZM Radio, Clarksville, Tennessee.
We're rolling right along this morning in the Saturday Sports Splash. As always, we are honored that you've chosen to kick off your sports weekend with us, and honored to have our next guest on the line, Adam Sparks, joining us from the Tennessean to talk a little bit about what's going on with Vanderbilt football this fall and their potential move off campus maybe sometime soon. Adam, how are you this morning?
Hey, good. How's it going?
It's going great. And first of all, before we get into that discussion on whether or not Vandy should be up for moving to a brand new off-campus stadium, let's talk at least a little bit about some actual football. From what you can tell, how is fall camp going for the Doors? And with a very tough schedule in and outside of the SEC, how successful do you believe they can be this season?
Well, I mean, it's a similar team to last year, which is a good thing. Last year was Vanderbilt's first bowl appearance, and Derek Mason's tenure, his 3-year tenure, this going into his 4th season. They bring back the majority of that team. This is by far the most experienced team Derek Mason has had. About 38 upperclassmen, a ton of seniors. You know, since he got here in 2014, his senior classes have been 9, 11, 14 players. And this year he's got in the 20s. So that's the most experienced team he's had. Most of the offense is back. Top rusher in Vanderbilt history, Ralph Webb, is back. Kyle Shermer, the quarterback, is back. So they feel good about what they have personnel-wise. They have to replace Zach Cunningham, who was an All-American linebacker for them last year. But they've been good defensively since Derek Mason took over. So, you know, that they feel like they're at least as good, I would say on paper, better than last year. The schedule, Vanderbilt fans are going to have to be patient, I think, this year, in that there are wins on the back half of the schedule, I feel like. It's a little weaker on that side of it, but, you know, on the front end, first 3 SEC games are Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Most teams in the country are not going to win any of those 3. Vanderbilt, you know, would probably be happy squeaking out one of them. But at Middle Tennessee, first game, that's a winnable game. Alabama A&M after that, that's a win. So they could win those. But Kansas State is ranked number 19 in the country. That's their 3rd game. I think it's a pretty pivotal game because Vandy will be a mild underdog in that one. Kansas State is ranked. But because they're ranked, if you get that one, that's a whole lot of momentum. You could potentially be 3-0 going into SEC play. And if you take your lumps in those 3 games that I mentioned before, you can still feel good about the season overall, again, with winnable games on the back half. I think this is a possible bowl team. Last year they were 6-6 in the regular season. And I think if you had to run through the schedule, this is a win, that's a loss. I think you probably end up something around 6 wins again.
Adam, unfortunately, success on the field hasn't always translated into huge fan support for the Commodores. I remember even when James Franklin was there winning 9 games a year, you could go to non-conference games and pretty much sit wherever you wanted. Why does VU football seem to be such a hard sell sometimes?
Well, there's a few factors. One, obviously, is the history. You can count winning seasons in the past 30, 40 years on, one hand, maybe 2. I think just one hand. So, you don't have tradition of winning there. That takes time. And Franklin got the attendance up some with some good seasons, but I think it just takes more than that. You have that. You have one that a lot of people don't realize, and that's just the smaller enrollment. The enrollment at Vanderbilt is 1/5 a lot of the other SEC schools. So you're not going to have that. A lot of the fan base, or a lot of the students, a lot of the alums don't live here. Some of them do, but you've got a smaller enrollment to begin with, and you've got people that move all around the country. There's just a whole lot of different factors. I think the biggest factor is they've got to win long term, not just 3-4 years. You've got to have a decade of good football to have people stay here. The stadium is not big already. I mean, it's 40,000 people, and if they get a new stadium they share with an MLS team, it's going to be smaller than that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They know what the size of their fan base is, but it's going to take winning over long term to be able to fill it up more like what they want.
Well, as we talk about those factors that maybe keep people away from VU football, I wanted to talk about and finally get into that stadium conversation. Vanderbilt baseball has a great venue in Hawkins Field. Memorial Gym has the unique layout and all of that great ambiance. But the football stadium there on West End, Adam, I'm sorry to say, it just isn't anything special. To what extent do you believe the venue might be holding football's attendance numbers down?
I don't think all that much. Now, I think a new stadium, win or lose, a new stadium anywhere will bring people out. That's anywhere, any team, any sport. New people will come to see the new house, so to speak. But to have people go long term, you've got to win consistently. If they get the new stadium that they share with an MLS team, most Vanderbilt fans don't like the idea of that. They're not going to like it then. I don't know that their attendance would be hurt that much because even though you would lose some hardcore old-school Vandy fans that are not going to go out to the Nashville Fairgrounds, even if it's a new stadium, you're going to gain a few more just from the newness factor. But they would have to win there to hold fans. You're right about the stadium, and I'm actually pulling up right beside it right now for football practice. There's not a ton of character to it. I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. If you win anywhere, people are going to come to it. A lot of people want something with more character. They want a new stadium on campus and all that. But, the main guy that would make the major donations for that is John Ingram, and he's the lead owner in the group trying to get MLS here. So his money, his attention is tied up elsewhere, which is why to some people it still kind of makes sense to try to pool those two together and have MLS and Vanderbilt share a stadium.
Sure, and that leads, Adam, right into my next question. Folks, our guest is Adam Sparks from the Tennessee, and we're talking about Vanderbilt football and their potential move off campus to a new shared stadium with what could be an MLS franchise there in Nashville. Adam, is it honestly realistic to think that Vanderbilt football could, in the near future, get a new stadium without partnering with their top donor, John Ingram, and agreeing to play at the proposed MLS venue? And if so, what, in your opinion, would that plan B look like?
Well, I think this is. I think whether or not they jump into this deal, sharing the stadium probably answers that question, and we'll know whether or not they're going to go into it in about the next 30 to 45 days. That's when they have to make their decision. It's because I think it's a little bit of lumps and things that say don't tie yourself into this off-campus stadium. Just give it a little time, and we'll get a brand new stadium on campus. And there's others, I think, in the administration that maybe know better and that are saying, if you don't get this one off campus now, you're not going to get a new stadium for a long, long time. It's this or nothing, so to speak. So I think it's a little bit of game of chicken you take it now while it's here, and then other people saying just let it go, and we think another one will come. It would take Ingram money. It would take other money. You know, the one thing being a private school and one that has a lot of money elsewhere, endowment and on campus with the university and all that, you're not going to get city help. You're not going to get Metro help to build one. So it could happen on campus, but, you know, I think the reason that they're in on this shared stadium idea is because they've looked around at donors and looked at possibilities, and nobody's really – stepping forward to help. So this is maybe the shared stadium is the best of bad ideas, so to speak.
You know, Adam, you're leading and alluding into this a little bit, so I'll just come right out and ask, what's your read at this point on how all of this is going to play out? If Nashville is indeed awarded one of those two MLS expansion franchises, what do you think the odds are that Vanderbilt football will agree to a partnership deal, making them a co-tenant at that new Fairgrounds Stadium?
Well, I was asked this on Twitter probably a couple weeks ago, and I said maybe 30-40% chance that they do it. I think you can swing it the other way now. Maybe it's a 60-70% chance. And I say that because since then we've had a Metro Council meeting to lay out the plan. We've had a Fairgrounds meeting about the site and all that. And at all those, David Williams, the Vanderbilt athletic director, has been front and center. He's attended those. He's been at those. The Metro Council meeting, he was actually up there with the ownership group as part of the presentation. If your athletic director is front and center of those types of things where they're showing renderings and all that, I don't think he's just showing up to as kind of a token. Yeah, sure, maybe we're interested kind of thing. I think there's a very real possibility they do it. So I think at this point it's a pretty decent possibility. I would even say better than 50-50 that this happens.
Yeah, it definitely looks that way. And Adam, as you pull up there to Vanderbilt Stadium for practice this afternoon, you look around and you see very little in the way of VIP suites or club level seating. How much do you think those kinds of revenue-generating opportunities at the MLS stadium might play into this decision for the Vandy administration?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's people with money that support Vanderbilt. They don't get the numbers in terms of attendance, but they do get more of a white-collar crowd than some others. And so that's something that, Vanderbilt Stadium does not have. If you go in the suites, they're not anything to brag about. They haven't been for a long time. I don't know if they ever were. If you have an MLS stadium, you'll have more of you'll have premium seating. You'll have a lot of amenities. You'll have really nice suites. I mean, the reputation of MLS is they have smaller venues, obviously, but they're done first class. They're state of the art, and they're patterned after. They're patterned to really, want the customer to come back, and especially with those that would buy suites. So it would be an upgrade for those type of Vandy fans. It would probably be a downgrade in a lot of people's minds for the Joe Blow fan off the street that just wants to come on campus and sit where his parents sat and where his grandparents sat and that sort of thing. So we'll just have to see which way it goes.
We will see which way it goes. And lastly, I just want to ask when we're going to see. I know we heard David Williams earlier this week kind of allude to an October timeline on letting everybody know, because I think there's a Metro Council meeting coming up sometime in October. They would like to have one in October about all of this. When will exactly we know if Vanderbilt football is going to be involved in this deal or not?
Yeah, it'll be. It could be as early as about 3 weeks from now. It's probably going to be more of the 6 weeks area. Early October. If I had to guess, just looking at the timeline of where the Metro Council meeting is floating out there a little bit. You know, there was the assumption early on, and I think I was one of those that had it, that this may drag into next year. That Vandy could kind of sit and wait to see if the MLS franchise was even awarded to Nashville, then make their decision. But you've got to have, a pretty precise plan for what your stadium is going to be to have this bid put together. And so they're going to have to say either they're in or out. If they're in, then the stadium's going to be 33 to 35,000 people. If they're out, it could drop more down to the 28 to 30,000 seats. So you got to pick one of those and go with it, and that's going to happen at that Metro Council meeting, likely early October.
And that 33 to 35,000 number, that, as you pointed out in an article earlier this week, that is right in line with Vandy's average attendance, right?
Yeah, their average attendance has been a little over 31 last year. It's been usually in the lower 30s. It depends on who's on their schedule. I mean, they'll have Alabama this year, and it'll sell out. It'll be 80% Alabama, but it'll sell out. And so, opponents fill most of the seats in the SEC games, and that's just how it is. But, yeah, that runs right in line with where their average attendance has been.
I think there are great arguments for and against, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But as you said, Adam, it sure does look like, as David Williams becomes more and more of a public figure around this thing, sure does look like it's going to happen. I appreciate you joining us this morning. Our show's that much better because you were kind enough to stop by, Adam. Thank you.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Adam Sparks, he's the Vanderbilt beat writer for the Tennessean. Kind enough to come talk with us this morning about what's been a hot topic around the Vanderbilt fan base. There are a lot of old-school Vanderbilt football fans that don't like the idea of moving off campus. I think it's about 6 miles. I really, personally, and if you've got a beef with this, you're more than welcome to interact with us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/1400 WJZM. But personally, I really, 6 miles, is that big of a deal? But apparently for some people, it is. I think for a brand new stadium, I would happily travel 6 miles if I was a Vanderbilt fan, but there are some that have an issue with it, and Adam Sparks from the Tennessean kind enough to join us and discuss the topic this morning. The biggest topic this weekend, without question, it's high school football. It's that time of year. It kicked off last night throughout the Volunteer State. You heard our brand new show last night, and I got to say I was pretty proud of it. Christian Christensen on the final score here on the Big 1400 did a great job recapping all of the area's action. We'll do that each and every Friday night from about 9:30 all the way up until 11 o'clock, and it's open for fans to call in. Had a lot of calls last night, a lot of activity here at the Big 1400 studios, and we appreciate everybody who participated. All of the high school football fans in the area, you now have a place to go. Post-game on Friday nights, the final score right here on the Big 1400 WJZM. We'll talk high school football next. We've got a great guest coming on, Chad Withrow, the lead editor, the editor-in-chief at tnhighschoolfootball.com and the host of 104.5 The Zone's Friday Night Finals. He'll be with us next. We'll talk Tennessee high school football right here on the Saturday Sports Splash.
Family outings should be special. They should be memorable. They should be fun. And you'll find all of that and more with a short trip to Culver's of Clarksville. With a focus on customer service and quality farm-fresh ingredients, Culver's is serving food and fun at a whole new level. Go by today for one of their made-to-order butter burgers or a waffle cone stuffed with fresh frozen custard. They're at 140 Southampton Place, just off Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, Culver's of Clarksville. Welcome to Delicious.
How did you sleep last night? Did you wake up sore or worse yet, still feeling tired? Say goodbye to that constant state of drowsiness with one quick trip to Beds Express. They're fighting sleepless nights one bed at a time, and they're doing so with a trusted staff of comfort experts trained to get you a good night's rest at an affordable price. Go see them at 1767 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard in Clarksville, 7643 Highway 70 South in Bellevue, or at 2222 Medical Center Parkway in Murfreesboro. Visit Beds Express today and sleep well tonight.
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill. a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A pre-loaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Jackson's Body Shop, downtown. Call 647-6989 or Jackson's.
WJZM Radio, Clarksville, Tennessee.
When it comes to high school football around the state of Tennessee, one of the guys that covers it as extensively as anybody is Chad Withrow. He's the host of 104.5 The Zone's Friday Night Finals, also the proprietor of TNHighSchoolFootball.com, and he's here with us this morning to talk about Week 0. Chad, how you doing?
Doing well, Justin. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, it's great to have you. Honored for you to be with us. And with everything you coordinate on a yearly basis in terms of high school football coverage, I got to ask, how do you determine which teams or which individual players take priority? I know you try to cover every team, at least in some capacity, but what determining factors go into which teams get more coverage than others?
Well, I got to give most of the credit to Donovan Stewart, who's our lead writer at TNHighSchoolFootball.com. He knows every coach in the state. He's got a database of over 500 head and assistant coaches across the state of Tennessee. So he's got a wealth of knowledge and info about every team across the state. But when I started this, sort of my sphere of influence with my work on 104.5 The Zone is in Nashville and the surrounding counties and really in the mid-state. So when we started this out, we really said, okay, let's make sure we're good at what we're good at. And what we're good at is Davidson County, surrounding counties. Let's perfect that before really going in-depth everywhere. Then we add Donovan Stewart, who writes capsules for every team across the state. So we are a statewide website now, but we really focus extensively on the mid-state and Davidson County and surrounding counties. So that's sort of where we start. It's kind of an inside-out approach. We start there, and we've expanded across the entire state.
Chad, as we talk about the mid-state, here in the greater Clarksville area, Week 0 was drama-filled. We had 5 games last night decided by a touchdown or less. What were the biggest surprises and the biggest outcomes, in your opinion, from high school football's opening night, not only in our neck of the woods, but around the state that maybe you didn't expect?
Yeah, and I have to say one thing. It's actually Week 1 now. They've done away with Week 0. As confusing as that was, we joked on the Midday 180 that they're going to turn it to Week 1/2 at some point, or Week 0.5, with all the back and forth with Week 0 and Week 1. But
I had just gotten used to Week 0. I had just gotten used to saying that.
No, we joke because you're not the only one. My co-host, my show, continue to say Week 0, but as of last year, they go Week 1 to Week 11. So the rationale was they wanted to end on Week 10 so that there's 10 games in the season. So they go Week 0 to Week 10. Now they decided to go Week 1 to Week 11 with the bye built in. But in terms of surprises across the mid-state, I'm really looking for it in your area. And do you guys consider Paris and Henry County the greater Clarksville area? I'm curious geographically if you consider it that.
I wouldn't say so. I really wouldn't. I mean, we hear some things from there, and they are, Henry County is a part of the same region as a lot of the Clarksville schools. So, yeah. I mean, we know what's going on with them, but I wouldn't consider it greater Clarksville.
Well, Henry County has had a lot of success, even at a state level, making Blue Cross Bowls, winning state titles. I want to see that next Clarksville program to take that step towards legitimacy on a statewide basis, just even making it to a Blue Cross Bowl. I'm curious as to who that program is going to be that steps up. In terms of surprises, I don't think there were any big upsets out there, but there were some point differentials that shocked me. One of those was Oakland over Independence on the televised game last night on MyTV 30. I really thought that was going to be a competitive game. Oakland looks really good once again. It's amazing. Their record over the last 4 years is something like 50-6, and they look like they could be headed towards a record like that again after they just just completely destroyed Independence last night. Also, I thought Cane Ridge at Marshall County down in southern Middle Tennessee, that was a nice win for Cane Ridge coming out of Metro and getting a big win in Lewisburg in a hostile environment. There were a few games that were bigger blowouts than I expected. Brentwood Academy, they were up 53-0 at halftime on Hillsboro, and most people hear Hillsboro and think, oh, that's a tradition-rich program in Nashville, which it is. That just shows you the difference between those high-powered Division II 3A schools, Brentwood Academy, Montgomery Bell Academy, Innsworth, as opposed to some really good public programs, and how the gap is so wide there between those. So those were just a few of the outcomes that surprised me, but no real huge upsets in week one.
Speaking of surprises in the first week, just from a prognostication standpoint, how hard is it in these first couple of weeks of high school football? And overall, how difficult is it to keep up with high school programs that have obvious roster turnover due to various reasons, ranging from graduation to lack of interest down to transfers? It's got to be tough.
It's extremely tough. And I'll be honest, I mean, it's impossible to try to sit there and recite a roster or go through, everyone on a team. I try to do my best to know coaches. I try to do my best to know a star or two on the really good teams out there. If you follow recruiting at all, which I'm sure that you do, you're going to know the top prospects in the area. You have Master Teague at Blackman, for instance, who's committed to Ohio State. Max Ray at Franklin, who's committed to Ohio State. The Tennessee commitments, Brant Lawless at Nashville Christian. The list goes on and on. So you're going to know some of those guys naturally if you follow recruiting. I'll also say at our website, tnhighschoolfootball.com, we have team previews, the capsules, which I mentioned, for every team in the state. But we have extensive team previews for every team in Nashville and surrounding counties. So you can go there. And on a Friday night in studio, for instance, I'll just go to my website and go click on the team page. I'm right there. Schedule pulls up. Coaching staff pulls up. The type of offense they run pulls up. And then I'll have 4 or 5 paragraphs on the team where you can quickly see exactly what's going on with each team. So that really helps. In terms of your question on prognostication, it's impossible. I mean, I can go into every week thinking, oh, this is going to be a really good game. You really don't know what the good games are going to be until probably week 4 or 5 when you get a sense of what the teams are exactly. I used the Oakland Independence game last night as an example, but that's when you can really start to get a feel for how good teams are, and you can start to really set the table for, oh, these are going to be the big matchups in these regions that you need to watch.
Chad Withrow, our guest this morning on the Saturday Sports Splash. He's the host of Friday Night Finals on 104.5 The Zone, also the proprietor of tnhighschoolfootball.com. And, Chad, you mentioned some of the guys that are being heavily recruited, some of the guys that have made commitments. But for just the casual football fans here in Middle Tennessee that might want to go see one of those talented players, a guy who has a chance to make waves at the next level, which players are your sort of all-area preseason team guys? I know it's early, but who are the players around the area that you can confidently say are worth the price of admission right now?
Yeah, I would recommend if you really just want to go and watch future Division I college guys, you're going to see a lot of on Saturday. I would pick the right matchup with teams featuring multiple guys like that. I'll give you an example. If you go and see Blackman take on Oakland, Blackman's got Trey Teague, a running back going to Ohio State. They've got a junior receiver who had something like 150 yards and 5 touchdowns last night in their win over Hendersonville, named Trey Knox, who's being recruited by everyone in America. So you can see those 2 guys on Blackman, plus some other younger guys who are getting some big college looks, going against a team like Oakland that's got a defensive back in Woody Washington, who's about to get an offer from Tennessee. He's only a junior. They've got other players that are going to be playing college football, so that's a good matchup to watch. Any of those Division II, 3A games I mentioned. Brentwood Academy has a number of guys that are going to be playing high-level college football. 2 of them going to Vanderbilt, Cameron Johnson and Gavin Schoenwald, both at Brentwood Academy, committed to Vanderbilt. If you go and watch them play Innsworth, for instance, they've got a defensive back in Jalen King who's committed to Georgia Tech. They've got a number of other guys with SEC offers. MBA the same way. Jackson Lampley, a big offensive lineman who's had offers from everyone in the SEC. If you plan it strategically, you can go watch one game, one setting, and see up to 9 or 10 guys that you're going to hear their names called on Saturday. So that's how I would advise people. It's kind of a week-to-week process if you want to look for the right combination of teams that are playing each other with big-time prospects. But that's what I would recommend is if you would just want to go see guys who are going to play on Saturday, I can give you a game each week to where you can go do that on both sides of the field.
You know, Chad, it amazes me. All of a sudden, there's been this boom of talent here in the mid-state, and it's really got me scratching my head. There was actually a Vandy football representative at the Clarksville Academy Harpeth High game we did here last night on WJZM, and it seems like every day, and you just mentioned a whole bunch of them, seems like every day you see something about an area player getting a high major D1 offer. Where has all of this talent come from? It hasn't always been this way. Why suddenly has our neck of the woods become such a recruiting hotbed?
You know, it's a great question, and I've talked about this with Coach Doug Matthews, who comes on my show, the Midday 180. I've talked about it with other high school coaches. I don't know, but let me say it this way. I think the coaching in the mid-state has gotten better. Obviously, there's been a population growth. When you look at the population growth of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and how it ranks top 5 nationally in terms of per capita population increase year after year, that's a big reason for this. Look at all those prospects coming from Rutherford County. That's a big part of it. I also honestly think, and I've talked to a number of coaches about this, I think the players were here for the last 20, 30, 40 years even. I think the stigma was Nashville didn't produce top talent, or the state of Tennessee didn't produce top talent, so college recruiters didn't come here as often. I think now that stigma has changed to Nashville's a hotbed. Middle Tennessee's a hotbed. There's tons of people there. There's tons of talent. Now suddenly every SEC assistant coach is at a high school football game in the mid-state on a Friday night where there were probably some players who could have played in the SEC or could have played in the Big Ten 15, 20, 25 years ago, but coaches were less likely to come to Nashville. So I think it's a variety of factors. One is the population increase. Two is better coaching within these programs. There's been a better investment with those coaches also in terms of facility. And three is I think that people now are starting to believe Nashville is a good area for high school football talent. So you're seeing a lot more coaches come in. And I think that's just coaches making the decision and word getting out that, hey, Nashville is a place we can go and get some players.
Chad, let's talk about coaches. My take has always been that coaching matters so much more in the high school ranks than it does anywhere else. In college, you're allowed to go out and recruit talent. In the NFL, you've got highly paid scouts making sure you've got the best of the best. But in high school football, you're kind of stuck with the hand you're dealt. Who are some of the coaches here in Middle Tennessee that you respect the most and feel like are able to do more with less when it's necessary?
It's a great question. There are a number of guys. I'm really fond of Ron Crawford at Brentwood High School. This is his second stint now with Brentwood. He won a state title there in 2002. Trey Perry at Mount Juliet is a guy that he hasn't had the success of a Ron Crawford or some other state championship winning head coaches, but he's a guy who really cares about his program. We talked about that investment in the program. They built an indoor facility out there. He is emotional about his players and them getting the college looks they deserve. I think he's a guy who really cares. You know, you can really tell the coaches that care and go above and beyond and those that don't about their program right away, especially when you're running a website covering high school football. I think Ingle Martin is a great young coaching talent, former NFL quarterback, played quarterback at the University of Florida and Furman. He does a great job at CPA. You know, all of those Division II programs, because they can invest more money in coaching and facilities, they have great coaches. Ricky Bowers comes to mind, one of the all-time greats. He was recently inducted in the Tennessee State Coaches Association Hall of Fame. David Martin is a really highly respected guy at Stewart's Creek. I mean, I could sit here and go on, but I think you're right, Justin, in that it's all about coaching at the high school level, and I think it's all about organization for a lot of these coaches, the organization of practice, having a practice plan, having a game plan, having a system that works, having standards that works within your program, and if you don't meet those, you don't play. I think so much of that with young people, and I'm sure you played high school sports, I played high school sports, it's about knowing what the expectation is and knowing what the standard is. I think the best coaches in high school football in the mid-state, they work to reach those standards with all their players and all their assistant coaches.
He's the host of Friday Night Finals on 104.5 The Zone, and he runs TNHighSchoolFootball.com. Chad Withrow is our guest this morning as we talk about the opening night of prep action. Not week 0 anymore. I've learned something today. It's week 1 now in the TSSAA. And, Chad, I know last night kind of whet our collective appetite for football. But theoretically, things should get a lot better as we move forward towards region play. What are the games you've kind of zeroed in on this season that just cannot wait, that you cannot wait to see played? As you look at future matchups, which are you betting will become instant classics?
Yeah, I think last night was one that I was really anticipating. That was Brentwood and Franklin, sort of the old school battle for Williamson County, the two of the older high schools there in that county. That was a great game. Brentwood won at 14-10 on the road at Franklin. I think it's setting up for Blackman and Oakland to be monumental here in a few weeks. Blackman just all over Hendersonville last night. That was another one of those surprising scores where I'm not surprised that Blackman won. I'm surprised that they were up 42-0 at one point in that game. Oakland, all over Independence. So when those two teams meet in Rutherford County, that's going to be a big matchup. And then I'm going to go back to Division II. You asked the question about college prospects. When Brentwood Academy and Montgomery Bell Academy and NBA played a rematch from last year's state championship, that was just an unbelievable – it was an instant classic watching that game in Cookeville. That's going to be a big-time matchup. Innsworth, that round robin really with NBA, Brentwood Academy, and Innsworth, you cannot go wrong there. I mean, every single region is going to have that one matchup that you're going to know by week 3 or 4. Okay, it's all building to this game. That's probably going to decide the region title. I could go through each region and say that, but I think top of the list would be the battle for Rutherford County. That will be Blackman versus Oakland. And I would go those Division II 3A matchups, the round robin between NBA, Brentwood Academy, and Innsworth.
With the creation of Division II has created some really, really good matchups. I'm excited about that and what that's kind of turned into. And it's the right thing to do. You've got schools with greater resources, and it only makes sense to match them up with each other. So I'm looking forward to all that. Chad, as we wind down a little bit here, I want to talk about kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Everybody loves a comeback story, and we may have a couple of those here in the greater Clarksville area to follow this season. West Creek High snapped a 21-game losing streak last night with a win over what's usually a pretty good White House Heritage team. And Fort Campbell High got a win over Kentucky Class 4A's Marshall County High last night. That's a pretty big deal. It's a Fort Campbell program that had success years ago, about a decade ago, and now all of a sudden maybe they're turning it around after years of struggles. Which recently struggling teams around the state do you feel have the greatest potential for completely turning things around here in 2017?
It's a great question. We joked last night. Red Boiling Springs is a program that I want to say they lost for 4 straight seasons. 4 straight years they lost. They didn't win a game for 4 years. And they broke that streak in 2009, I believe. And they won a game last night. And we brought up that, hey, it's amazing that we're not, celebrating the fact that Red Boiling Springs won a game. The Good Pasture did this a year ago. They went 0-20 in 2014 and 2015. They came back and went, I believe, 8-2 or 9-1 a year ago. So that was a nice bounce-back story. I'm going to circle Antioch. There's a lot of metro programs. You talked about the opposite end of the spectrum from Division II. There are a lot of metro programs that struggle financially. They struggle with numbers of players to come out and play football. And when they get in this rut, in this downward spiral, it's tough to recover from that. It's tough to get out of it. Antioch was a program that they had LaMarcus Coker, who was a University of Tennessee running back in the early 2000s. They had Preston Brown, another really good running back that went on to play college football. They had some really good teams in the mid-2000s, early 2000s. And then they fell off a cliff. And they have not been good for years now. They got a big win last night over Station Camp. Those are the stories I like to follow. And let's see if a team like Antioch can rebuild and rebound and actually have a good season. That's one I'm focused on now to say, hey, maybe this is the metro team that can pull themselves out of that downward spiral and have a really productive season.
Chad, I feel like this segment has been really productive. I appreciate you joining us. You bring credibility every time you do, and so I appreciate you being a part of our show this morning, and I hope you'll give our Clarksville team some love all season there on tnhighschoolfootball.com.
Definitely, guys. That's another area that I think is growing with the high school football, just like the rest of the mid-state. So I'm sure we'll be talking more and more about them. Appreciate it, and don't be a stranger. Give me a call anytime.
Chad, thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks, Justin.
Chad Withrow, the host of Friday Night Finals on 104.5 The Zone. Also, he runs TN High School Football WJZM.com, and I thought it appropriate to have a little high school football conversation this morning after the opening week of play, and what a week it was here in the greater Clarksville area. We'll end our show. Our time is already out here. We're running overtime this morning, but want to end our show with the high school scoreboard. We started our show this way. What a week it was, the opening week of high school football. 5 games decided for greater Clarksville area teams by a touchdown or less. Southwestern Kentucky beat Northwest. That wasn't one of those close games. That one 41-6. Greenbrier took down Kenwood 32-6. Fort Campbell in a squeaker over Marshall County High in Western Kentucky 18-12. West Creek took down White House Heritage. They snap a 21-game losing streak over by the Creek. 25-13 the final there. McEwen beat Houston County 21-14. Christian County wins over Stewart County 62-26. Sycamore High edged out Montgomery Central 14-13 the final there. Harpeth High wins. Clarksville Academy loses a heartbreaker 13-12 the final in that one, a game you heard right here on the Big 1400. And over on our sister station last night, you heard the exciting battle for the Warfield Shield as Clarksville High gets it back. They win 15-13 over at Hilda J. Richardson Field. Whole bunch of fun opening up high school football season, and glad we could do it with our stations here. We're going to make a big deal out of high school football all season long. Again, you can hear Final Score right here on WJZM every Friday night. It's going to start immediately after the Clarksville Academy broadcast, right around 9:30, 9:45, and it'll go all the way until 11 o'clock. We thank you for kicking off your sports weekend with a splash yet again. Got to thank all of our guests, Adam Sparks from the Tennessean, Rhett Bryan from the Tennessee Titans Radio Network, and Chad Withrow from TNHighSchoolFootball.com. We had a lot of fun bringing it to you, and we hope you'll join us again next Saturday at 10 o'clock. Until then, I'm Justin Swallows saying so long, everybody.
Walk 10 miles on my hands and knees. Ain't no doubt about it, baby, it's you I aim to please. I wrestle with a lion and a grizzly bear.
There's finally a stress-free, no-risk way to buy a new mattress thanks to Beds Express. With their Triple Z guarantee, there's literally no way you can go wrong. Don't waste another night tossing and turning on